Hello and welcome to Pockenrop. In this video I am going to revisit, after 2.5 years, my very first video, which was my top 15 albums of the 1980s. It's one of the longest videos I ever uploaded. It runs to nearly 45 minutes. I think I banged on far too much, and my intention is to do a much shorter video. However, I'm not stopping at 15. I'm not stopping at a top 30. I'm going to do my top 50 albums of the 1980s. I am going to go relatively whistle stop. Before I go into my top 50, I would remind you to subscribe if you've not already done so. Click the thumbs up to like the video and the bell to receive notifications of future content. And so let's start with number 50. And it's Elvis Costello and the Attractions' Get Happy. A great record. This is his kind of homage to black beat music, and it's a great album from 1980. Number 49, and one of the albums that as I was pulling the actual physical material together, thought, oh, I've got to include this. How could I not? It's Computer World by Kraftwerk. And I'm really fond of Kraftwerk. This album contains their number one single, Computer Love, which was coupled with The Model from The Man Machine, which, by the way, I prefer as a Kraftwerk album. But this is a really fine 80s album. Number 48, I have placed Chris Rea's Water Sign, an album that he recorded originally as a load of demos. He was on the verge of being dropped by his record label. He gave them this, intending to say, I'm going to record this, and they went, you've already recorded it. These are the demos, and they were put out as the original recording. They're really fine demos, because actually you wouldn't know that listening to the record. Really good record, Water Sign by Chris Rea. Number 47, I've placed Dire Straits Making Movies from 1980, their third record, and their first with a changed lineup. David Knopfler quit before this album was released. I don't think he appears on it. Obviously, it contains Tunnel of Love and Romeo and Juliet, but we've got Skate Away, Espresso Love, and just as the track Solid Rock says, it's a solid album. Making Movies 47. Number 46 is the first entry on this list, and it will not be the last, from REM with Life's Rich Pageant from 1986. Life's Rich Pageant contains Begin the Begin and Hyena. It contains Fall on Me, which is just a sublime song, I believe, Cuyahoga. Really strong album, and my number 46. Number 45 is one of those albums that no one else has in their lists except me. Bucks Fizz, Are You Ready? Their second record. Now, I've said before, I think this is their best album, but it is not my favourite. So this contains My Camera Never Lies and The Land of Make Believe. In fact, they bookend the album. It also has Now Those Days Are Gone, which is my favourite Bucks Fizz song by some distance. Absolutely beautiful a cappella vocals and harmonies. But then we've also got Another Night and Easy Love and 20th Century Hero. It's their best album, but it does not hold the level of affection in my heart that another one of theirs does. That'll be coming up soon. Are You Ready by Bucks Fizz at number 45. Number 44, we're heading to 1983 for The Rise and Fall by Madness. This, for me, is Madness's best album. And it contains the hits Tomorrow Is Just Another Day and Our House, but Blueskin Beast and Mr. Speaker Gets the Word. Madness Is All in the Mind, New Delhi. It's the title track, The Rise and Fall. It's their best record. And number 44. Number 43, I have placed an album that contains two smash hit number one singles. Super Trooper by ABBA. I did a video ranking all of ABBA's albums, so if you actually want to go and watch that, why not go and click the link. But Super Trooper, obviously the title track, Winner Takes It All, but you also got Lay All Your Love on Me and The Piper and The Way Old Friends Do, and then the beautiful and sublime Our Last Summer. It's a really good pop album. My number 43. At number 42, we're heading into some rock territory for 1987's Hysteria by Def Leppard. An album that sold bucket loads in America as well as in the UK. This could almost be viewed as a greatest hits, given the fact that it's got Women and Rocket and Animal and Pour Some Sugar on Me and the title track Hysteria. It's a really great rock album, a hard rock album. And to follow it up, sticking with hard rock and to conclude the 40s with number 41, Back in Black by AC/DC. Much like the Computer World album, this is one that I neglected to include in my original list and then thought, how could I not? When it contains Hell's Bells and Back in Black and You Shook Me All Night Long. And it's just a good time, balls to the wall record. Back in Black, number 41. Next tranche, starting at number 40, we are staying with hard rock and actually nudging even further into one of my favourite bands. I've done multiple videos on this band. It's heavy metal. It's Iron Maiden's debut from 1980. This has got Prowler, Transylvania, Iron Maiden, Running Free, Charlotte the Harlot, and Phantom of the Opera. It's a truly great debut album from 1918. It's my number 40. Number 39, for the second and final time on this list, it's ABBA with The Visitors. Its main hit was One of Us, but The Visitors is on this, which is just a claustrophobic song. It's got Slipping Through My Fingers, which is beautiful, and probably ever so slightly better even than Our Last Summer. Head Over Heels is a great track, and it was a good finish for ABBA. And I'm glad they came back with Voyage, but if they'd not, this would have been a fitting epitaph for the 1970s greatest pop band. The Visitors by ABBA at number 39. Number 38 is an album that 50% of is phenomenal and would probably see it in the top 20. And the other 50% of is not as good, but is better than you might be fearing or expecting. It's Double Fantasy by John Lennon and Yoko Ono. So I'll leave it to you to work out which 50% is phenomenal. It's not tricky when you consider Just Like Starting Over and Woman and Watching the Wheels and Clean Up Time and Beautiful Boy. But to be fair, Yes, I'm Your Angel and Kiss, Kiss, Kiss by Yoko are also actually really rather good. It's a good record. I have placed it at number 38. Number 37, another one that I thought, how could I have forgotten this? Eric Clapton's Journeyman, my favourite Eric Clapton album, and I love every track on this record. So Bad Love, Pretending, No Alibis. The closing track, the cover of Before You Accuse Me, is just sublime. I absolutely adore it. Old Love. And then you've got Run So Far, which was written by George Harrison, and then finally his posthumous version was released on Brainwashed. Journeyman, great record. And mentioning George Harrison, when we get to number 36, it's the man himself with Cloud 9, his best 1980s record. We kick off with the title track. We get That's What It Takes, Fishing on the Sand, which is an absolutely superb track. We move on to stuff like When We Was Fab and Devil's Radio. And the album concludes with Got My Mind Set on You, which was a number one hit single for him and a number two in the UK. Cloud 9, his best album of the 80s, except for number 35, which is The Travelling Wilburys. So this is a supergroup that came together pretty much by accident. They were recording a B-side for one of the tracks from Cloud 9, which was called Handle With Care. And in the way that things happened with happenstance, a few people were around in LA at the time. They were recording in someone's garage. So we ended up with this supergroup of George Harrison, Roy Orbison, Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, and Bob Dylan. It's just, they're having a good time. And it comes across in the entire record. So I've already mentioned Handle with Care, but then there's the end of the line, Tweeter and the Monkey Man, Margarita, and so many great tracks on Travelling Wilburys Volume 1. And it's a tragedy that Roy Orbison died. But Travelling Wilburys Volume 1 is a superlative record, and it's number 35. Number 34, it's back with Elvis Costello for Blood and Chocolate. So this is his last independent record that was released under Demon, and it's a blooming angry listen, and sometimes quite hard listen. I Want You and Uncomplicated, Hope You're Happy Now, great tracks like Crimes of Paris and Battered Old Bird and Poor Napoleon, Next Time Round. And it's an album that's taken me a long time to truly warm to and grow to love. But Blood and Chocolate, sitting pretty at number 34. Number 33, it's an album that is slowly growing in my affections, Temple of Low Men by Crowded House. Into Temptation alone is worth its admission fee, but when you're able to get Sister Madly and Better Be Home Soon on it, and I Feel Possessed, it's just a really enjoyable album. And so many, there's no such thing really as a bad Crowded House album, because Neil Finn is such a strong songwriter. And Temple of Low Men, it's a really, really good album, and it was given 5 stars by Q when it was released. I really like it now. Temple of Low Men at number 33. At number 32, I have placed The Road to Hell by Chris Rea. This is not a perfect album, but there is something about this that wraps me up. The title track, both parts, is phenomenal. Tell Me There's a Heaven is achingly beautiful. You Must Be Evil is angry. And there's something, this album was introduced to me by a friend of mine at school, as a lot of albums on this list will have been, but this one in particular, I remember my friend buying it, doing me a tape copy back in those days, and it's probably in this list at the moment because I had the really sad news and tragic news that that friend had been killed in a motorcycle accident about 6 weeks ago. And so this is the same friend who introduced me to Mike Oldfield, and to a certain extent fostered my enjoyment and love of the Beatles and McCartney. And to have lost that friend, when I think of albums like this, I think of him. And Road to Hell, my number 32. And number 31, rounding out this little batch, is Thriller by Michael Jackson. The best-selling album in the world from 1982, and just a superlative record. Beat It, Billie Jean, PYT, The Girl Is Mine, Gotta Be Starting Something, and of course Thriller. 1982's Thriller at number 31. Number 30, I have placed Rogues Gallery by Slade. Now, this is an album that pretty much flew under the radar. It's their penultimate record, and it was their first as a studio-only band, and yet I think the songwriting on here is great. All Join Hands, but there's so many other great tracks on here, like 7 Year Bitch, Walking on Water, Running on Alcohol, and Little Sheila, and Harmony. Harmony's a great, great song. And it didn't really sell. Slade albums stopped selling probably after the Nobody's Fool album, really, which is a shame. Because Rogues Gallery from 1985, writing was on the wall, perhaps, for them as a band, but Rogues Gallery is a good album. My number 30. Number 29 is a record that is growing on me. And that's not just because I would be desperately wishing to go and see them live on the 4th of July in Birmingham, but because actually I finally got a vinyl copy. Somewhere in Time by Iron Maiden. I still have a few issues with the production quality on here. That does sound like it was recorded in a barn, but Somewhere in Time is really starting to reveal its charms to me. I've always loved Wasted Years and Stranger in a Strange Land, but now I'm learning to love Deja Vu and Alexander the Great. It's not a patch on its predecessor. Spoilers, Power Slave is coming. But Somewhere in Time is a really good record that is just starting to rise in my affections. Somewhere in Time, my number 29. At 28, East Side Story by Squeeze. Squeeze's best album, bar none. I did a Squeeze album ranking and it came up top on that. Album that was intended to be recorded as a potential double with 4 different producers, rumoured to have been Nick Lowe, Elvis Costello, Dave Edmunds, and apparently Paul McCartney. It never came off. The vast majority of the record is produced by Elvis Costello, with only In Quintessence, the opening track, from Dave Edmunds. But this contains Labelled with Love and Tempted and Is That Love and the beautiful Vanity Fair, which should have ended the record rather than messed around. But it all has Piccadilly and Someone Else's Heart and Someone Else's Bell. Strong, strong record, and Squeeze is best. My number, 28. At 27, it's War by U2. This is my favourite U2 album, with the possible exception of Achtung Baby. I think it's their most accessible and easy to get into record, and this marks the point at which they became the biggest band on the planet. It's the starting point of that journey, when you've got New Year's Day and Sunday Bloody Sunday and 40 and Pouring Water on a Drowning Man and Refugee. War by U2, my number 27. At number 26, meaning that we are halfway through, and if you're looking at the timestamp, you're thinking, how can we possibly be only halfway through? Don't worry, it's going to get quicker. Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. This is the 40th anniversary edition that's also got Beast Over Hammersmith. But Number of the Beast is a brilliant album. Absolutely incredible. Number of the Beast and Run to the Hills. Hallowed Be Thy Name, which is probably Maiden's most admired song. I would say it's his greatest song because I think I prefer Wasted Years from Somewhere in Time. The Prisoner, Children of the Damned, Invaders. This version has Total Eclipse, but I also contain the original version that contains Gangland. And it's Iron Maiden's first number 1 album. It's their bestseller. Number of the Beast at number 26. At number 25, Raintown by Deacon Blue. So this is their debut. It was built around the fact that he had written Dignity, which the record company liked and told him to create a band. It became Deacon Blue. They recorded Raintown and gave us Loaded, When Will You Make My Telephone Ring, and Ragman, and He Looks Like Spencer Tracy Now, Born in a Storm, Love's Great Fears, which features Chris Rea. And it's a great late 80s pop album from Deacon Blue, their debut, and my number 25. Number 24 is an album that wasn't in this list, probably if I'd have compiled it a week or two ago, but I've been listening to it recently and realised, actually, I've been judging it too harshly on the fact that there are some standout singles on it and not paying attention to how good all of the other tracks are. And it's Lexicon of Love by ABC. I've heard this described as an album of A-sides, and it kind of is. There's hardly a track on here that couldn't have stood as a single, and yet they released Poison Arrow and The Look of Love and All of My Heart and Tears Are Not Enough. 4 singles from it. They could have released Show Me. They could have released Many Happy Returns, because it's an album of A-side quality material. As a result, it's catapulted it into my top 25 of the 1980s. Lexicon of Love, number 24. Number 23, it's REM's Reckoning. So this is a This is their sophomore album, and I genuinely think it's an absolutely terrific record. Harbour Coat, Seven Chinese Brothers, Time After Time, Don't Go Back to Rockville, So Central Rain, Pretty Persuasion. It's a camera. It's a great record. I really want a copy of this on vinyl because I think if I was to hear it on vinyl, it could even climb higher because vinyl is the way it was meant to be heard. I've only ever heard CD versions of it. Reckoning, number 23. And number 22 is a band I have a huge amount of affection for, and an album that I originally owned on cassette and really absorbed back in 1985-86. Hunting High and Low by a-ha. This, I think I owned it on the strength of Take On Me and The Sun Always Shines on TV. By the time the title track was released as a single, I already owned it and loved it. Train of Thought, I'm coming back round to. At the time I didn't like it, but we've also got Living a Boy's Adventure Tale and Blue Sky and You Tell Me and Love Is Reason, and it's great debut. Really, really good debut, Hunting High and Low, and I'm not sure whether or not I included it in my debut albums video, and if I didn't, I really should have done. Hunting High and Low, 22. And to round out this little batch at number 21, Chris Rere's Wired to the Moon, and a record that I used to think was ho-hum, but I've always loved Ace of Hearts. Now I also love the opening track, Bombolini. I love the title track, Wired to the Moon. Shine, Shine, Shine. I don't know what it is, but I love it. And Winning. And I think it's another one of those that's just flew under the radar in the 80s. It wasn't a success. Number 21, Wired to the Moon. So into the top 20. And this is going to go a lot quicker than you think, because if I included it in my original top 15, and all of my original top 15 are coming up in this little batch here, I'm just going to say, go back and watch my original top 15. But to kick off with, at number 20, it wasn't in there, Green by R.E.M. Now, this is my current favourite R.E.M. album. Pop Song 89, Get Up, You Are the Everything, Stand and World Leader Pretend. That's the first half of the record. I don't think the quality is quite maintained in the second half, although I do love Orange Crush. I do like Untitled and I Remember California. But Green, I think, was a statement of intent. They are now on a major label. And for me, I think Green truly delivers on all of... In fact, it builds on the classic IRS era of R.E.M. Green, number 20. Number 19, it's Flowers in the Dirt by Paul McCartney. I've said many times this is an album I have very little objectivity about, and that remains the case because my bro face is on it. But then so is this one, and the perfect song, Put It There. If you were to take my original copy that I ever had of this, which had Ure Le Soleil on it, it would be further down the list. However, the vinyl is the way to listen to it because it is the proper 12-track album. I will concede it drops off a cliff in the second half, but Flowers in the Dirt, go and watch my song ranking, or indeed my reimagined Flowers in the Dirt, because it's one of those albums that it's heart over head choice. Flowers in the Dirt, number 19. Number 18, the first album that has slipped sufficiently down the rankings to no longer be in my top 15, Bucks Fizz by Bucks Fizz. I've said before, this is again the first album I truly fell in love with. Go and watch my top 15 of the 1980s, my very first video, to see me wax lyrical about this album. And number 17, tumbled down out of my 15 a little bit. It's Reckless by Bryan Adams. Go back and watch the video to see my thoughts on that. And while you're at it, why not find out my thoughts about number 16, which is Gracelands by Paul Simon. That too has slipped out of my top 15 ever so slightly. And at number 15, one of the ones that's pushed it out Peter Gabriel 3 from 1980. So this album contains the smash hit Games Without Frontiers, which also features Kate Bush on uncredited vocals. But we've also got Family Snapshot, which is just a sublime track, and I think just is in my top 100 tracks of all time. I really like And Through the Wire, Intruder, No Self-Control, and Biko, that closes the record. It's my favourite Peter Gabriel album. Peter Gabriel 3, number 15. At number 14, and to my recollection in exactly the same place as it was when I did my original top 15, Running in the Family by Level 42. Go back and watch to find out what I think of that. And while you're there, you might want to find out what I think of the next on the list, number 13, King of America by The Costello Show. Great album, 1986. At number 12, and this probably climbed and pushed out a couple of the others as a result of the fact that, well, Andy Rourke, the bassist, died in the last couple of months. Strange Ways, Here We Come. A rush and a push, and the land that we stand on is ours. I started something I couldn't finish. Girlfriend in a Coma. Paint a Vulgar Picture. There's so many tracks on this. I Won't Share You. Death at One's Elbow. Stop Me If You Think You've Heard This One Before. And Last Night I Dreamt Somebody Loved Me. It's a great album, and it's just the last Smiths album. And rest in peace, Andy Rourke. My number 12, Strange Ways, Here We Come. At number 11, having fallen down the ranking list a little bit, it's Tug of War. I still love it. Go back, watch the video to see what I think of Tug of War. Which means we are getting right to the business end now. And all but one of these albums I talk about in my 1980s top 15 original video, so I'm not going to keep mentioning it. I'm just going to quickly run through them with the exception of the new entry. And so at number 10, Hand of Kindness from 1983 by Richard Thompson. Great album. At number 9 is the new entry. It's Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. Possibly the album that has prompted me revisiting in the first place. But I thought, how could I not have included Appetite for Destruction? I think the simple answer is I hadn't really re-listened to it for quite a while until I put it on and thought, wow, this record really is phenomenal. And I think the McCartney in Goal podcast had a bit to do with that because they did an episode on it. Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child of Mine, Paradise City, Mr. Brownstone, Night Train, My Michelle, Rocket Queen. It's a great rock album. Appetite for Destruction, the new entry at number 9. At number 8, again, I think this might well be in almost exactly the same position as it was last time. Love Over Gold by Dire Straits. This is a half-speed master edition that I managed to pick up pretty cheap from a record shop. At number 7, I said it was coming. It's Power Slave by Iron Maiden. This has climbed a little bit. I believe I originally had it at number 10. But it's Power Slave. It's just a stonkingly good album. At number 6, The Queen is Dead by Smiths. Now, this is the best Smiths album, as I said, in my Smiths album and song ranking as a tribute to Andy Rourke. It's my number 6. Number 5, an album that I absolutely fell in love with the band as a result of. It's Deacon Blues, When the World Knows Your Name. Number 1 hit album in 1989, and one of those albums I have very little activity about. It's my favourite Deacon Blue record. And number 4, Brothers in Arms. I think it may well be in almost exactly the same position as it was before. This is, again, also a half-speed master. I'm really looking forward to giving this a proper spin and hearing what depths come out of the record, because I haven't yet played it. I think I picked it up not long ago whilst I didn't really have my record player. And the biggest climber out of my original top 15 Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. I am in a bit of an Iron Maiden shtick at the moment, and Seventh Son is a phenomenal album. It is my favourite Maiden album, no question. It's just happens to be now my third favourite album of the 80s. Number 2, it is still Imperial Bedroom by Elvis Costello and the Attractions, my favourite Elvis Costello record from 1982. But not my favourite record from 1982, because that is still my number 1, Shoot Out the Lights by Richard and Linda Thompson. The best record there is every likelihood you've never heard. What a great record. So that's it. That is my top 50 albums of the 1980s. Like I said, let me know in the comments below what you think of this mega ranking video. It's the longest rank of anything I think I've done in a single video. Please tell me your favourite albums of the 80s. I am itching to know, particularly if I've not heard it, because it's a decade I do enjoy. I'll be back with another video, but until then, please remember to subscribe, like, hit the bell, and thanks for watching.